So I've got a total of 8 metal bootlegs here, anything from rehearsals to live shows to demos and more. So stick around for record details, needle drops, sound ratings, and all of that. First up is Hellhammer with Satanic Rites, released in 2022 by Mortal Shock Records, which is a US label with a few releases from Slayer, Motorhead, The Misfits, and G.G. Allin. The demo material was recorded between December 2nd and December 4th of 1983 at Sound Concept Studio in northeast Switzerland. This was originally released on cassette back in 1983 and was limited to 200 copies back then. It's also widely believed that Martin Ain isn't playing on these tracks, even though he's involved with production, engineering, and artwork. This is also the third of 3 demos known for Hellhammer, the other 2 being Death Fiend and Triumph of Death, also recorded in 1983. And speaking of production, it's more or less on par with their following EP, Apocalyptic Raids. Also, 3 of the 4 tracks that would appear in a re-recorded form for the EP are here, with Horus Aggressor missing. You can also tell that they were still working on these tracks between these demo versions and the EP versions, as there are slight changes and playing variations from one to the other. This is especially noticeable in the track Triumph of Death, whose demo version is a little quicker, and vocals are, shall we say, less agonized. Anyways, let's hear part of a track from this boot. This is Maniac. Final on this one is 1LP Classic Black. There you are. Also comes with a bio sheet, as well as a lyric sheet. Full lyrics there. Credits, and all of that, as well as a really cool picture of the band on the reverse. Bio sheet's pretty cool as well. Right there. And plenty there as well. Love the early artwork there. Very, very nice. So as mentioned, the sound here is similar to the EP. It's rough playing and heavily distorted in general, but standard for Hellhammer. Vocals often sound distant or very much reverb to hell. A bit on the trebly end as well, with little to no bass. But again, Hellhammer. The transfer from what I'll assume to be the original Prowlin Death Records release is also pretty faithful to the original, which is pretty good news. So it's a decent collection of Hellhammer demo tracks, though. It might have been cool if someone would put out a 3-record set to include the remaining 2 demos. But since this is the best known and well-liked of the 3, it does make sense to concentrate on this one. In any case, this is a must-have for fans of Hellhammer and early Celtic Frost, especially if you got into the Triumph of Death project as of recent and you're hungry for early material as a result. And if we're going to cover Hellhammer, it's only fair to cover this band as well. This is Celtic Frost with Procreation of the Wicked, Rehearsal, June 84, released in 2020 by Metal Priest Records. So given the proximity of time to the formation of Celtic Frost, this is definitely an early rehearsal for the band, as they formed this same month. All but one track would later appear in a re-recorded version on their first 2 EPs, Morbid Tales and Emperor's Return. The track Messiah is a leftover Hellhammer song. One thing I caught in this rehearsals version of Return to the Eve is that I got all of those oohs and ahs and woos and laughs that aren't on the original studio version but are in the Tragic Serenades party mix. I think we all know Tom's sounds by now. So that's fun. Also, Into the Crypt of Race is an instrumental here, with no lyrics, so it's a little odd to hear it that way. Anyways, let's check out something from the rehearsal. This is Procreation of the Wicked. Vinyl variant is 1 LP, classic black. Logos on both sides. Also comes with a bio sheet, very similar to the Hellhammer one, right there. Picture and other details on the reverse. So the sound is reasonable, but not as clear as the Hellhammer record. A little bit of muffling, and it's possible this was recorded on a tape recorder or boombox. Regardless, you can still hear everyone decently, though with vocals slightly lower than I would like them. Of course, this is a rehearsal and not a demo, so my expectations weren't exactly high here. There is some bad timing with the drums on occasion from Isaac Darzo, which might explain why he didn't last long in the band. Pure conjecture, actually. Anyways, from both a historical as well as a fan perspective, it's very cool to hear this early rehearsal from the very newly formed Celtic Frost. Also really good companion to that Hellhammer demo collection. So yeah, buy them both. Next up is Iron Maiden with Unleash the Beast, released in 2022 by Dear Boss Records, who've released a number of FM broadcast boots from such artists as White Zombie, Anthrax, Black Sabbath, and of course Iron Maiden. The show was recorded on April 28, 1981 in the Netherlands during their Killer World Tour with supporting act More, which was another, albeit lesser known Nawabum band. Only 10 of the 16 tracks played that night are here, missing are Wrathchild, Another Life with a drum solo, Innocent Exile, and Murders in the Rue Morgue from the main set, as well as Running Free and Prowler from the encore. Also, the track order is not the set order, so these were moved around a bit for the record, just so you know. Speaking of track selection, I might have traded out the instrumentals Genghis Khan and Transylvania for Wrathchild and Murders in the Rue Morgue, if feasible, given the space on the vinyl. But as for Transylvania, we do get a Dave Murray guitar solo during the track, along with some killer bass fills from Steve Harris, so that's pretty cool. Also a bit of call and response during Drifter, if that's your thing. Anyways, let's check out something from the show. This is Sanctuary. Vinyl variant is 1 LP yellow, limited to 300 copies. So the sound on this one is pretty good for a boot, though this was an FM broadcast, and those are usually better than simple audience recordings. The only minus here is Paul's vocals are a little low on the first two tracks, suggesting more than one recording source because he's definitely brought up to level in the other tracks. Everything else is reasonably balanced, and of course you can hear Steve's bass really well, per usual. The performance overall is top-notch and tight, and you get to hear the audience and in-between song banter. So likely one of the better early Maiden boots I have in terms of sound quality, and while I would have preferred to have the entire set, what I got here is pretty good with a great selection of tracks. And of course, since I'm a sucker for Di'Anno-era live material from this band, I was glad to add this to my collection. Next is Carcass with Demos LP 86-87, released in 2009, but with no record label listed. The original demos were, of course, released independently. So what we have here are two demos, the Flesh-Ripping Sonic Torment demo and the Symphonies of Sickness demo. The jacket states 1986 and 1987 respectively, though. I've also seen their actual releases as 1987 and 1988, so the earlier dates could be just when they were recorded. All the songs on the Flesh-Ripping demo, with the exception of Die in Pain, were later re-recorded for the band's debut full-length album, Reek of Putrefaction. Name changes include Limb from Limb, which became Frenzied Detruncation. Rotten to the Gore became Phiosified Rotten to the Gore. Necro-Cannibal Blood Feast became Feast on Dismembered Carnage, and Face Meltarg became Mucopurulence Excretor. Gotta love the titles, right? Anyways, the Symphonies demo is simpler than that, as all tracks made it to their studio versions on their album of the same name. It should be said that the vocals on Flesh Ripping are handled by former member Sanji Sumner, and they're a bit deep and monotonous a lot of the times. He was only on this demo, after which the band became a trio for a time and shared vocal duties. Definitely getting moments of grindcore throughout, not to mention grind gore, of course. But there are plenty of slower, sludgier moments here, so it's not a total speed fest the entire time. As for Symphonies, we get the alternating vocals right from the get-go, but the brutality and speed have certainly been turned up on this one. Compared to Side 1, this is definitely a noisier demo, but not entirely unlistenable. Note too that this is early grindcore, whose production is often expected to be subpar. So let's hear part of a track from the Flesh Ripping demo. This is Genital Grinder, going straight into regurgitation of giblets. Vinyl variant here is 1 LP, classic black. Same graphic on both sides. So sound quality between the two demos are comparable, though Symphonies is a little more muffled and noisier. So I had to split the difference in my star rating. Flesh Ripping is certainly a bit cleaner than Symphonies for sure, but both are worth hearing as a fan of Carcass's early material. You know, one thing I really like about Carcass in their early days is that they did set themselves apart from their British contemporaries, mostly the ones who also made it onto Earache Records in the late 80s. While many of those bands went for as much speed, noise, and aggression as possible, Carcass had some musicality to them, and it shows even in these early demos. Of course, you have moments of speed here, but it's not over-relied upon, and there are plenty of tempo shifts and other factors that keep these tracks from all sounding the same. Worth the spin. Next up is Judas Priest with Fuel for Life 1986, released in 2023 by Cult Legends, which is a European label with a slew of live performance releases from such bands as AC/DC, Motorhead, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, Dio, Metallica, and others. You can even check out their catalog at cultlegends.com. Anyways, the show was recorded on May 23rd, 1986 at the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, Missouri, during their Fuel for Life tour in support of their album Turbo. Dokken was the opening act for this show and others on the tour, including the one in a little documentary called Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Anyways, at 1 LP, this is not the full show, as 9 of the 19 songs are missing, such being Out in the Cold, Locked In, Love Bites, Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, The Sentinel, Desert Plains, Free Will Burning, the Green Manalishi with the two-pronged crown, and the encore track, You've Got Another Thing Coming. But still, plenty of good tracks here, though only 3 from Turbo, which is either good or bad, depending on your opinion of that album. Also, songs are wildly out of order from the original set list. Anyways, this does claim to be a radio broadcast, and it could very well be that, but it has more of a really good audience recording sound to it, which means decent, but not perfect. A slightly tinny sound overall, but not a deal breaker. Also, you do get the audience here, especially between tracks, which of course is good. So let's check out a classic. This is Turbo Lover. Vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP, classic black. Overall, the sound is decent, but again, slightly tinny. Still a good performance and setlist, so I'm happy with the purchase. Of course, if you're looking for a better quality recording of a show on this tour, there's always the commercial live album Priest Live, recorded a month later in Atlanta and Dallas. This is still good, though. And in case you were curious about my opinion on the very studio album they are touring on this boot, I did do an episode of Do I Still Hate on Turbo, which you can find at my channel with a simple search. Next is Coroner with Death Cult, released in 2023 by Death Row Records. And as mentioned on this show before, Death Row Records is a bootleg label pretending to be a real label with the same name and the same logo, except that Death Row Records, the original rather, handles rap acts, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, etc. So yeah, it's weird. Anyways, for the most part, this is the band's 1986 Death Cult demo, all 4 tracks, originally released on cassette, which was limited back then to 250 copies. But now you have it on vinyl, along with a couple studio tracks that came from the Noise Records compilation albums Doomsday News and Doomsday News 2, respectively, as well as a live version of Totentanz recorded in Bochum, Germany in August of 1988. So basically you can consider this a bootleg comp. Anyways, the demo tracks were recorded between the 10th and the 19th of October 1985 at Magnetics Studio in Switzerland. The interesting inclusion on this recording is that vocals are handled by Celtic Frost singer Tom G. Warrior, who also co-produced this. A couple of the guys in Coroner were once roadies for Celtic Frost, so that's likely how this all got set up. However, Tom was never a member of this band, despite all the rumors. And yes, it's weird hearing Tom sing Coroner songs, especially when he does his numerous "heys." Also, a typo here, you see it says invicable instead of invincible. It's kind of fun, I guess. Anyways, let's hear something from one of the demo tracks. This is Spectators of Sin. Vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP, blue marbled. The cover of the record there on the reverse. So the demo tracks actually sound incredibly clear, bright, and heavy, though lacking in fullness that a studio album recording might have. The comp tracks are cool, but I already have Doomsday News 1 and 2, so not as big of a deal to me. And the live track is pretty much bootleg quality, a little rough but pretty listenable, but also a decent performance. Overall, a nice bootleg comp with varied content, some of which hard to find. Check it out. Next up is Megadeth with Live at São Paulo, Brazil, September 2nd, 1995, released in 2017 by Door Records, which is a European label that handles a number of genres, though I found out a whole lot of jazz primarily. Anyways, the show was recorded on, as you could guess, September 2nd, 1995 in São Paulo, Brazil, during the band's Euthanasia tour. This isn't the entire set, as 3 tracks are missing from the performance. That is Hangar 18, Reckoning Day, and A Tout Le Monde, all absent on this one. But tracks are otherwise in order of performance. Megadeth was also one of many bands on the bill as part of the Monsters of Rock Festival, including Alice Cooper, Faith No More, Paradise Lost of all bands, Ozzy Osbourne, and others. Anyways, the mix on this one starts off rather unbalanced, but largely straightens out as the set progresses. Volume levels drift in the beginning as well, but I'm thinking there might also be some equipment issues going on here, notably with vocal mics. Speaking of which, vocals are a little high in the mix overall, but everything else is decent for the most part. But the pure reverb and delay poured on lead vocals is really crazy at times. Not to mention the quality of Dave's singing also varies a bit. I mean, usually he's on, but sometimes he's really off. Like Ozzy or Vince Neil off. There are clear moments when Mustaine's playing is a bit sloppy as well, but that wouldn't be unusual for his live playing in the 80s and 90s overall, including times I'd seen the band in concert. I remember seeing them on the So Far So Good So What tour, and Dave's playing a lead-in riff, and I can't make it out for the life of me. It actually took the other band members to kick in and to tell me, hey, this is Liar, which is funny because I was very familiar with the album, many months listening to it. Kind of crazy. They were also on drugs a lot of times. You might know that back then. Anyways, the audience in this recording is kind of hard to hear during a song, even when audience participation is happening, so there's that. Anyways, let's check out part of a track. This is Symphony of Destruction.
You take a mortal man and put him in control. Watch him become a god. Watch people's heads roll. Oh.
Vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP white. So a Train of Consequences is the only Euthanasia track here. This might not be the boot to get if you're wanting more from that particular album. And although the sound issues are here, the performance is mostly pretty competent, and the setlist is largely great. Except that I might have swapped out Anarchy in the UK for Hangar 18 instead, but maybe that's just me. At any rate, this boot is good, but not perfect by any stretch. As for me, I'm good with Euthanasia, but don't consider it a top album. I definitely bought this boot more for the then current lineup of the band, with both Marty Friedman and Nick Menza still around. I'm digging this boot, but I'd be psyched to find one from the tour for Rust in Peace just a little bit more. Next is a compilation of band demos called The Bass Strikes Back, Legacy, Death Angel, and Exodus, released in 2022 by Evil Dead Records in Belgium. The label also has releases from Iron Maiden, Metallica, Slayer, The Scorpions, Overkill, and others. Anyways, 3 demos in total, starting with Demo 1 from Legacy, Later Testament. This was recorded in 1985 and not 1983, as the record jacket says. The band did form in 1983, but this demo is very well known, so 1985 it is. All 4 tracks from the original demo are here. We get Burnt Offerings, Reign of Terror, Alone in the Dark, and Raging Waters. Also here is a 3-track demo from Exodus called 1982 Demo. This time the year is right, February 12th to be exact. Kirk Hammett is still in the band when this was recorded, but bass is handled by Jeff Andrews instead of Rob McKillop. And the other usuals are here as well, Gary Holt, Tom Hunting, and the late Paul Bailoff as well. Tracks here are Whipping Queen, Death and Domination, and Warlord. And the demo comp finishes off with the Heavy Metal Insanity demo from Death Angel, recorded March 14th, 1983, and is known to be their first demo. So their ages at this point range from 11 to 16. Again, always amazing to think how young these guys were when they started. Anyways, the tracks are No Time for Love, The Hunted, Intruder, and Barren Lands. So some more details on the demo sets. The Legacy demo obviously had Zetro on vocals before he went to Exodus. Also Mike Ronchette on drums, as they didn't have Louis Clementi until 1987. Really love Steve's vocals here, fitting well with the material, and actually hearing him almost clean sing in the chorus of Alone in the Dark was surprisingly awesome. The mix is overall decent, but maybe bass is a little buried. Also, fun to hear an earlier version of Skulnick on leads. Great stuff. 3 of the 4 tracks would later be re-recorded for the debut Testament album, The Legacy, except for Reign of Terror, which would find its way in a re-recorded form on the B-side of Testament's Trial by Fire single from 1988. Love both versions of the song, though. The Exodus demo tracks are considerably lower in volume, and the sound quality isn't as great, but it's more or less listenable. Also, this is definitely not the Exodus you're used to. Clearly, they hadn't discovered thrash yet, and what you'll get instead is a bit of Nawabim worship with a pinch of melodic punk singing from Bailoff, oddly enough. Weirdly, these aren't the complete tracks for whatever reasons, as they do cut out early. I mean, each one does. Also, the main riff in Warlord is clearly ripping off Holocaust's Death or Glory. Clearly. And as for the Death Angel set right away, this isn't Mark on vocals. He wasn't a member of the band yet. So that's Dennis Pappas singing, who later took over bass once Mark joined. Smart choice because Mark is clearly a better singer. Also, this is a far cry from the ultra-violence. Like Exodus, they hadn't discovered thrash in their early period. This is more heavy rock with an occasional nod to the 70s, though maybe some faint Nawabim influence as well in terms of its punkier side. And although the song structure is fairly basic, the guitar solos are what really stick out here, courtesy of Gus. Granted, he might need a little work on his licks, but he's also well on his way here. Anyways, let's hear a bit from one of these demos. This is Legacy with Reign of Terror. Vinyl variant here is 1 LP, let's say magenta? Yeah, I'm going with that. Anyways, a solid sampling of San Francisco Bay Area bands, whether they started out thrash or became that later on. Although I'm rounding out the sound quality ranking to 3 stars, I'd say it'd be 3.5 for Legacy, 2 for Exodus, and 3 for Death Angel. Of course, the real standout set here is the Legacy one in terms of sound, heaviness, and overall relevance to thrash, with the other 2 demos being more of a historical curiosity. Even still, check into it. As always, I'd love to hear about your favorite bootlegs that you have, also any preferred sources for buying boots. You should let me know all of that and anything else that makes sense in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, definitely let me know with a like or a mention in the comments, or maybe even share this video with some of your friends on social media. And while you're at it, it would be really cool if you subscribe to my channel. I mean, why not? Speaking of my channel, if you're new here, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I do videos on metal vinyl collecting, but also on classic and modern metal in general. I do quite a number of shows on those subjects, so definitely check out my playlist for all of those. Anyways, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.